So you have this moment of clarity. We're like,
Yeah.
look, I need to know that the stuff that we care about the most is secure. Like, bottom line, the government, back to the government piece, there are tons of use cases, whether it's cybercrime, forensics, analysis work, where, hey, I don't need everybody to be looking at that stuff. I definitely don't need anybody manipulating that stuff. And I need to be able to tell the lawyer or the judge with, how do I disclose that information properly? Right? That's a good question.
All right, let's get it. Welcome to Chatting with Chief, hosted by Backpack Technologies LLC, a place where we talk about some of the hottest buzzwords and concerns in the IT and cyber worlds. Today's guest is Jason Dunn-Potter from Intel, and I'm your host, Jason Blair from Backpack Technologies LLC. Jason is an Army Chief Warrant Officer 5, another one, whose assignments include the 3rd Signal Brigade, the Human Resources Command, and the White House Communications Agency, and I can go on and on. He's been deployed. He's been around the globe. He's internationally known. All right. So where do we get started with this one? And I think the best place is to just start with our guest. Hey, Jason, nice to see you, man. How you been?
Hey, boss, I really appreciate you inviting me out today. Like, we spend a lot of time talking to folks about all kinds of stuff, but I got to tell you, I'm really excited about what you're doing. I'm really excited about all the people you're bringing on, because I got to tell you, this podcast has been a good time. And I know you're just getting started. So if you haven't been on the cast, might be something you might want to put some to-do lists for your folks out there listening. But yeah, we're excited, man.
Many thanks to that. Many thanks for that. So can you introduce yourself and
Sure.
tell me what your role in the company is?
Sure. I'm Jason Dunn-Potter. I'm a solutions architect here at Intel Corporation. My job is to support all the public sector team, right? Our information is key, right? A lot of folks don't realize what's happening in the industry. What are we building? What are the tools? How to shape those tools and policies? My job role is really just facilitate information exchange, help people understand the technology, and then also help them solve problems that they have. Because a lot of people don't know we already solved that problem. That's my favorite conversation, by the way, is they come up with something we already fixed. So
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I used to call on you all the time, like, "Hey, man, what exactly is it that you do?" Right? So as I was, doing my military transition and stuff like that, and calling you at the various places that I worked at. So a very interesting job title, very interesting role, and to be honest with you, knowing you from our military background, I think it just fits you so well. So, but let's jump right into why we're here, right? So confidential computing, right?
yep.
So what is it, and is it worth the hype?
Sure. So confidential computing is the next iteration of security, right, for cloud architecture, right? We've got stuff that does cloud security, i.e. SGX, right? You can do the application secure, no problem. We've got TDX, which is the VM. Like, I can secure all of the VM environment. That's great. But do you support securing the workload? I use the example for folks who don't understand any of this, like, hey, if I had a bank downtown and I dropped my gold and jewels, I wouldn't drop them on the drawer of the floor of the vault, right? I would want my own lockbox where I put my things. And then I pull open the drawer, my drawer, with my data, and I would go do stuff with it, right? And then I put it back in the drawer when I'm done with it. The cloud is secure. The vault is secure. No one's robbing the vault. But I don't know who else is in that vault while I'm working in there, right? So if you're in the HR, the finance, the medical community, like, there are times when privacy is very important. It impacts a lot of industries, but people don't realize, like, the cloud itself is secure, right? Is your data inside of your organization secure? And is it being secure enough that you can tell a judge in a law room that your cyber crimes unit did everything to ensure integrity of that data? How many officers are in the New York Police Department? How many have access to the entire database of data? I feel like that's a discussion worth having with some folks, because I trust everybody this much. Do I trust everybody this much? Like, that's a conversation we're having.
Yeah, it's like, you gotta, trust people for different parts of, some people you'll loan money, some people you'll loan your car.
Some people watch your kids, and some people don't get invited to Christmas ever. right? Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, I really like what you said about the bank thing, and it makes sense because if you think about like, I mean, you see it in movies all the time, right? The
Yeah.
person goes in, it's probably some type of criminal thing. But anyway, they go in and the guy waits, and the person that brought him in leaves and they look around, even though they know they're in the vault by themselves, and then go and retrieve their secure stuff, right? So I mean, great analogy, especially after the research I was doing on this subject. So, which brings me to my next question, right? So, I thanks for the invite, by the way, but I attended the Intel Public Sector Summit in DC a couple weeks ago,
Oh yeah.
uh, and I heard terms like SDX. I'm sorry, SGX,
SGX and TDX and
TDX.
TEE. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So,
I know.
so TDX, TEE,
Yep.
confidential computing. Can you
Yep.
break those down just a little bit more?
Easily. You don't need a PhD to understand it. It's super simple. SGX, Secure Guard Extension. It's a technical term. You military folks like acronyms. We kind of keep it simple. I
Yeah,
told
yeah,
them you
yeah.
got to stop calling things by weird stuff. Just call it a project and give it some acronyms. We're good. SGX, application security, right? If I want to make sure that my application in a cloud environment is secure, I can run SGX. By the way, it doesn't have to be in a cloud environment. All these tools work on your on-prem solution the same way they work in a cloud solution. Right. It's just that we're targeting cloud vendors because we know that's where the concern is. Because what they say, other people's money, right? Like when I'm
Yeah,
loading my
right.
data to somebody, I want to know that I feel secure in that environment. I know they're doing what they need to do to protect their architecture, but are they doing the things they got to protect me? So SDX, application level security, right? Are my apps secure? TDX, trusted domain. Think about it no different than in a VM domain, like a VM environment. It wraps the whole VM in a secure bubble, right? A TEE is really the workload, the trusted execution, right? Think about application, how it executes. When a application turns on and pulls your data from cold store, which is data at rest, right? The TEE creates a secure enclave where you, the user, is now securing your workload as it's moving from storage to application back to storage, right? You control all of that, and then it sanitizes the application on the way out, so it doesn't leave anything that's not supposed to be there. SGX apps, TDX VM, TEE confidential computing, the workload.
Look, man, that is a lot to digest, but at the same time, it just makes sense because you think this is already happening, right? I mean,
Right,
it's one of those assumptions that you make, and obviously it wasn't because we wouldn't have to invent it,
right,
right?
right,
We,
right. Well, so it was to a point, right? So some of the things people did was they were like, "Hey, I'll just put my HR in a different container, and I'll put my
right,
finance in a different container." Right? That's expensive. That's an expensive model to go after. Also, from an admin standpoint, does your admin have access to all of those containers? Probably. Do all of your admins have all of the access? Probably. Is that okay? Probably not. Right.
right.
So I want to be able to give you another option besides purchasing 27 cloud variants to do your job. This allows you to put everything and your tools, by the way. So think
Okay.
about like from an R&D standpoint, if I've got 20 teams working off the same data set, right? I want to protect the integrity of the data set, not
Hmm.
because somebody's in there stealing the stuff, but I want to make sure nobody's manipulating it either, right? Accidentally. It doesn't
Right,
mean
right.
nefarious. This isn't always about bad things. This is about accidents. Like, I'm not going to run around the lab with a chainsaw because it's not safe. Why would I put a junior admin on the AI R&D project because he's got access or she's got access? I might have concerns that just warrant me taking one extra step to protect my stuff. Just saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You
It's not
you
always
you always got
nefarious.
you always got a way to describe some stuff. I tell you, but all right. So
Yeah.
as I can imagine, right, the government is concerned with a lot of
Oh yeah.
things, and their data, right, is
Oh,
got to
hey.
make the security of their data got to make the top of the list, right? So let me ask you this, Jason: uh, is there as they move transition more and more and more to the cloud, right? Is their data
Mhm.
secure?
So yes, but right. So this is where we have the deep conversation. I got to tell you, we had great conversations with this and the JWCC. We've had conversations with DoD leadership, federal government agencies, and policy writers. Like, hey, what are we doing to not just make sure that our data is secure, but it's secure at every stage of the transition, right? From the time
Mhm.
I make it to the time I move it to the time I use it. What am I doing to make sure each one of those steps, right? I can encrypt a drive, no problem. We've done that for a while. That's not new, no problem. My cloud vendor, right? Pick your favorite CSP, Microsoft, AWS, etc. They all have security bundles. That's awesome. I have tools and mitigation strategies, but I don't know that I have control of that data, right? That's a lot of trust to give to
Hmm.
another somebody else. This architecture allows you to actually have organic trust in what you know because you're the one who holds the keys and access points. You're the one who releases that control to other admins and other system owners, right? So back to R&D example, I may only want 2 or 3 of the teams to be able to manipulate the engine and the data itself for the data set. The other 17 teams, right, may just need to view it. And I can control that kind of controls using confidential computing. And there's lots of other scenarios in finance and banking. I need to distribute to payroll, but I don't need payroll to be looking at everybody's paycheck. Not the same, right? They don't need access to the bank accounts. They just need to know that they need to disperse the money, right? And they
Yeah.
don't need to know the names of the people because it wasn't important. You need the routing number, the account number, and how much, and let it go, right? The people who manage the finance department need to have that level of detail, but not every clerk in there, right? So there's ways to manipulate the controls, and that's the
Yeah.
best part about this. It gives you lots of flexibility. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, we could keep going, but down to more things, but I really want to get to this question, right?
shoot.
AI, right? Actually,
Oh,
there's 2 more questions I really want to ask you. AI is definitely the first one, and
mhm.
how does that evolve, and how is that impacted, and how does that work it with the ecosystem and everything like that? How does can you
Okay,
talk about that a little bit?
yes, sir. I sure can. I can tell you right now, we are doing so much in AI. That's like 14 other podcasts all on their own. But
Yeah,
I can
right.
tell you how it relates to this topic is a lot of people do not realize that your AI engine is based on your model. Your model is based on your trainable data, the data you collected, the sensors that you collect, the information you store. All of that data comes in somewhere. And how do you protect it? What you do with it builds your model, and then you turn around and use your model to solve your AI problems.
Okay.
Right? It's a simple workflow, right? But at the end of the day, I have to have integrity. If I don't know that my model's not being manipulated, here's the other thing. There's a great article published about 10 years ago about securing intellectual property off of 3D printers because nobody thought about that. The actual printer itself had memory, and people were going in and drilling into those because there was no cybersecurity tools on 3D printers anywhere. And they were stealing futuristic car model designs, building structures, all of that stuff that people were shoving into these 3D printers because nobody knew they should secure those things because they were easy targets.
Well,
This
see,
is that kind of discussion to have when it comes to
I
AI.
mean,
Same.
I think that's very true. But I mean, people fall into this false assumption, right? I mean, we can
Right,
talk about legacy terms like castle and moat, or
right.
hey, all my stuff is segmented, or and they should nobody should have access to this type of air gap system, or whatever. But
hmm
where there's a will, there's a way, right? So
I
yeah,
want less hands in the pot when I'm in the kitchen cooking, right? Like it's just how we do dinner. We just talk about Thanksgiving, right? Only one person cooks the turkey at my house. One.
I mean,
Everybody
right.
else watches. like,
So
like,
I mean, you bring
yeah,
up a good point though. Now, but what we're talking about is let's keep that cooking thing an example. I like cookies. Turkey's
yeah.
too dry for me. No, I'm just playing. But if now you're talking about putting doors and locks on the kitchen while you're cooking, right?
Right, right. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm putting doors and locks on each of the ingredient containers, right? Sugar, salt. Don't be mixing the two up because you'll ruin Christmas.
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
it's a thing, right? Like it's a
yeah. But then you
funny story, but true story. Like
but we're
it
talking
happens.
about data manipulation at that point, right?
Right. And it's not necessarily nefarious. Sometimes it's just somebody in there doing something because they thought they were supposed to do something. Listen, we've all had victimless crimes in which you're like, oh no, something terrible happened because some new guy or new team member, new gal came on and did something. And you're like, oh no. Right. So you have this moment of clarity where like,
Yeah.
look, I need to know that the stuff that we care about the most is secure. Like bottom line. The government, back to the government piece, there are tons of use cases, whether it's cybercrime, forensics, analysis work, where, hey, I don't need everybody to be looking at that stuff. I definitely don't need anybody manipulating that stuff. And I need to be able to tell the lawyer or the judge with how do I disclose that information properly, right? That's a good question. Healthcare is a whole nother kettle of requirements. There's all kinds of federal law about what you can and can't do, which is what's keeping a lot of companies from going to cloud architecture in the first place. Listen, cloud brings a lot of capability, a lot. It brings redundancy, scalability. There's a ton of stuff. It also brings the ability to leverage large numbers of tools you cannot get in your laptop. You just can't. You can do large language models, a giant inference AI models, back to AI stuff. You can do all kinds of stuff with that data if you have the resources. And clouds bring those resources. That's why they're so popular. That's why the DoD is looking at it so hard as a backup location where, hey, I could do the tactical edge stuff, and then I'm going to port my data out, and they're going to take it and do COCOM level AI analysis work, right? Because they care about other things that I don't even begin to care about. My sensor picked up something, not affecting me, don't care, got stuff to do. COCOM's like, I need that data, right? So it's like, how do I secure it on both sides so that everybody's doing this stuff? And finance districts, I mean, that sells itself. Like, I don't want anybody manipulating anything in the company portfolio on the finance side.
Yeah. Hey, Jason, I mean, dude, you've been great. I think I need to have you back on because, we just having a lot of fun, and this conversation can keep going. But there's at least 5 more questions I want to ask you, but I kind of, the time restraints. So, before we go though, how can people get a hold of you?
So we're easy to find. Intel's got a whole public sector team. You're welcome to tag me on LinkedIn. It's easy when you post a thing. People will be able to find me. And if you don't know me, find any Army warrant officer on the planet. They will find me. We're 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon. And I think I'm going to be playing Kevin Bacon in this story. And then also, just so you know, you don't have to just talk to us. There's lots of companies doing this on our behalf. We built the tool, right? We're like the shovel manufacturer. I don't go sell you the shovel. I build shovels, and I ship them to everywhere. You can go to your local stores and pick them up all over the place. Fortanix, Anjuna, Capgemini, Leidos, Accenture, Azure, Microsoft, of course, Google, of course, Entrust. Dude, that's just some of the vendors that are all over this. There are probably 200-300 vendors now that have picked this up as a need. The cloud vendors themselves are adopting in certain scenarios, but it's not something they're going to offer by default because a lot of people don't need that level of security. If you're just playing with a mom and pop grocery store and all you care about is inventory and everybody just puts in inventory, I'm good. But if you're working on the finance side, on the back side of the grocery store, I probably care a lot about that. That's probably something I want separate, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing governmental stuff in finance, admin, HR, crime, cybercrime, digital forensics, all the intelligence community stuff, this is definitely one of your, I must ask these questions and I need to know. And all of those companies I listed, all of them are doing that for all of those different sectors and more. A lot more.
Yeah.
We're actually finding a lot of use cases.
I mean, it makes sense. It's definitely one of those things to have that it doesn't really matter your scale, right? You're going to need something like this, especially if you don't have complete control over your environment, right? So, like you just said, you gave all the different examples: healthcare, finance, the public sector. All these different, they still have a need to secure their data and IP. So, hey, Jason, man, it's always good talking to you, buddy, man. And I'll make sure I reach out again so we can do this again.
We have plenty to talk about. There's a lot going on, sir.
All right, man. Hey, have a good one, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, boss. Cheers.